This is Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
What's up, Forge fans? Welcome to this episode of Forge Daily. I am your host, Mackenzie Barwell, coming to you June 7th, 2024. Tomorrow, Forge FC matching up against a 6th place Cavalry FC for yet another edition of that 2023 CPL final rematch. In anticipation for this game, today I am joined by Steve Milton. He and I will briefly discuss what went down last weekend in that 3-0 win against York United, but mostly talk about our predictions for what promises to be a difficult match on the road tomorrow. So let's get right into our conversation and enjoy today's episode. Okay, Milty, welcome back. Thanks for joining me. I know we're a little bit out of schedule here on a Friday instead of the day back after a weekend. So.
Oh, no problem, Mackenzie. Hey, I got to think of Mackenzie. I thought you're Canadian. You should be Mackenzie.
Did you really think about that?
I just thought about
That's
it. Yeah,
so
it just occurred
funny
to me. I was going to call you because I keep calling you Mac. I was going to call you Z there for a while. I thought, wait a minute, no, it'd have to be Zed.
Z right. Is crazy, Milty. You do not have my consent for that one.
Okay. What about Zed? Okay.
Zed, maybe. Let me think on it. Okay.
Okay. No, you're Mac.
Anyways, you're right, Mac. We'll leave it at that. MAC, by the way.
Okay. All right, Mac. Okay.
Here we go. Listen, we got a match to preview, but because we skipped out on our debrief episode, we'll quickly go over that York United match because, Milty, I want to get your thoughts on that one.
You had made the point, I think you've made it twice already, that Benni Badibanga likes to get a shot off
early,
right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he did it and he just drilled one from in the 15th minute or 14th minute or something. It just went over top of the net, but it's kind of a tone setter in a way. And those, you remember that shot, right? I mean, what do you think that does?
Absolutely. Yeah. And to be honest, I think the beginning of that York game was a little bit disorganized. I think the first 10 minutes were relatively back and forth, and I don't think that Forge felt they were in a groove. And maybe I wouldn't have said that had I been sitting up here on the 7th floor, but I was right next to the bench. Coach Bobby's always, talking with the players from the sidelines. Benni shooting that in the 15th minute from, almost outside the 18-yard box. One is a tone setter, like you said, but also, shows this sense of urgency that we need to pick it up here and take back control of this game.
I think it's fair analysis. I think that was quite something. And it also can have a tactical advantage too. You think, oh, hey, this guy might drill one. Look how hard he can hit it. And they know about him already. And that can draw players to them. It can create that little pocket over time. And those are the things you don't really see unless you watch a film in really slow motion and say, well, yeah, they're shading a little bit here. He's not the only guy that'll draw one or two players to him. But obviously Kwasi's going to show us a little bit of that from now on too. And this was a coming out party for Kwasi, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, this was the game in which and we're talking Kwasi for people that don't know him, Kwasi Poku here, and he was been a surprise choice as striker, and Mac and I have talked about him before a little bit, but this game he was sensational, and he's going to be another guy now that draws. I mean, they got a lot of people that somebody's going to be open here if they find them all the time, even against a good central defending team like Calgary.
Oh, absolutely. And you saw that in the way that he received that ball from Borges to get around the defender, that central defender, and then pass it off to Daniel, who ends up scoring the third goal of this game.
And that's a good central defender that he beat. And we'll just why don't we review that a little bit for everybody, Mac? He had his back to the net, and the ball came to him in front of him. It's a really nice feed from Borges, who's just again been outstanding. And he could feel the defender on his left side. So it really is his right side because he's facing the wrong way. He can't even see that defender, but he knows where he is.
Yeah.
And he can feel him. So he kind of faked left, fake right. And he knew that on one side or the other, if anybody ran through,
it would be open.
He was going to be able to get it. He would be open. Yeah. It happened to be Daniel Para that ran through. He didn't see Para till he looked up after he kind of made the move left, right, and then just fed it to him. And I mean, Parra could have blown it in the net like one of the little push balls with a straw, So like that, it was, outstanding. And then he made a play. He made several plays. I mean, he made four dynamite plays. He had a really good shot early, and then he forced the goaltender. He was among the people that came in to force the goaltender into making that early mistake, which allowed
that's right.
Kyle Becker to I mean, it was the goaltender's fault. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was good defense to force him. And then later in the game, I think the 62nd minute, the goalkeeper, was beaten on a drilled shot. Now, this was a reaction play, and it came right on the goal line to Kwasi, who cleared it. Mm-hmm. Now, that would have made it 3-1 with a lot of time left,
100%,
and would have given York some life. But that was the play that basically sealed it, and he was able to clear it too. He says, look, anybody would do that, but he was in the right position. He was playing right on the goalpost. That ball was going in.
Right place, right time, Milty. This is not luck. We've talked about it before.
Yeah. And really, let's not forget, I mean, they were without their number one and number two strikers on this team, and have been for 2 or 3 games now.
I'm honestly curious to know, when these two guys come back into the lineup, whether Kwasi will still be in the rotation for that number 9 spot, because he's, I don't know, really solidifying himself in that role. And you even take a look at CPL Team of the Week, for example. We've got Kwasi up top, Borges and Daniel Parra all along that left side. So I don't know, it's just an unreal left side of the pitch.
He's going to play a lot of minutes, and my guess would be it'll depend on the full health of the strikers when they come back, because nobody comes back in perfect shape right away. And what the substitution pattern needs to be, depending on the opposition that they're playing, who plays what. And again, it also could depend on how he develops even more over the next little while. I mean, this is a short-term thing right now in terms of, but it isn't really, because he's been around here now. He's been learning at the feet of everybody else, getting a little more minutes here, a little more minutes there, and working his way in, as Bobby likes to refer to him and other players like him, the kind of players you have to have in the CPL that start really young, and I think it was 18 or 19, and then get incrementally better, and you used them in less stressful situations, and then you kept using him, and then of course he comes in. The big thing for him was playing right off the top 2 years ago against Cruz Azul. Playing in a game like that really helps. He was 19 years old then.
That was a very, I think, pivotal moment for so many players on this team.
It really was. It really was. And of course, then having a chance to do it again this year, it just amazing. So you grow. That's how you grow. And that's the idea in this league too, because that'll keep younger players coming here. Like, I don't mean just Hamilton, but to the league, rather than going somewhere on their own. And this is a clear development path as well. Right. I mean, it always is, career-wise it is, but also individually. Now you can see what happens with a player like that. He gets to be a pro for a year or two, and learn, and then just keep rising, and then eventually becomes the kind of guy you can't do without.
I think too, what I've noticed about Kwasi recently is his aggression on the field, because he's not typically, I don't think, one of the most aggressive players on this Forge roster.
I think you're right. And those are the little things that you see, and it's not just Kwasi; it's a bunch of other people. And we saw a really good example of that. Once Forge had this particular game in hand at 3-0, they could throw all the kids out there.
Right.
They got everybody out there, didn't they? Tavernier played out there. Kone and Kane both played, and that's a lot of U21 minutes, which is a sidebar.
Yeah.
That's not the intent, but it helps. And they need to be in that position where they can do some of that. This development thing is real, and they're not the only team in the league that's developing young players by any means, but I think they're the best example of it, and that's why people come here.
I think it's also so cool that they can bring out those younger guys and then have them close out a match with such ease. Like KJ, I love watching that kid play, Every
Yeah.
time he comes on the field, whether there's 30 minutes left or 5, he is sprinting, like just putting in every ounce of effort that he possibly can. That comes from them knowing that this is an opportunity for them to get better. Like these are those developmental moments.
Well, and everything's on film. Every second, and this is what happens with it takes young people a moment or two more than that to learn that every moment that you're a professional athlete, you're being watched, and much of every game for sure, your film is being watched, not just by you, by every prospective team that might want a player like you around the world. I mean, there are more specific places that CPL players end up, but it's a global village soccer, and it takes a while to understand that. If you take a second off, it's on film. If you go hard and you make these big plays and you are in the right position at the right time, it's not only on film; it's smart people are analyzing these films. I mean, there are really good soccer people analyzing these films, and
Right.
they'll see the little things that not even somebody who's a good analyst like you are going to see those little things and say, well, that can translate to the game that we play. So I think it takes a while to have that sink in, and not first of all to understand that that's happening, and then B, to get over the pressure of that. Because that's a heavy burden. You don't face that when you're 15 years old or 14 years 17, which these guys were very recently.
So knowing that, accepting the pressure, and then wanting, to take advantage of that. Anyways, but I think having those guys come on later on in the game with such confidence and energy, combined with, players like Kwasi Poku playing out of their position, Tristan Borges, Daniel Para being in as good of form as they are right now, it makes the burden of not having these players from abroad be here right now, not having some of their strikers in the best form. Like, I don't think this coaching staff or, Coach Bobby, for example, is in a state of panic right now because they have all of these players really stepping up and knowing their role. I think we should move on to the Cavalry game, Milton.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Another guy that we could highlight here is Jassim Khalilat. We don't really know at this point who we might see in net.
Yeah, he made a one save that was very important in the game. Like, it was another great reaction save, and again, you never know what is going to be in the moment that turns it around for the other team. So you got to be ready for those moments. And when you play against a team like Calgary coming up, they've got some dangerous guys, and he'll really, whoever is in net or in goal is going to have to watch that trailer. That's the way teams try to play in this game. Always, it's the secondary shot that's always the problem. So first of all, it's important and both goalkeepers on this team, I've loved the way they've basically moved the ball. I mean, there was Khalilat made a mistake in the game when he was pressured a little bit, but those are the kinds of, you almost want to see those kinds of mistakes so they don't happen again. And they didn't cost him, and he'll be more aware now. But both of them distribute the ball extremely well. I really like the way they distribute the ball, but against a team like Calgary they're just dying for second chances. Look where they're sitting right now, Cavalry. They can't win a game, but they also don't lose them.
That's what I was going to say. What is it? 6 draws they've got right now?
Yeah, they only have 1 loss. It's Forge. There's a thing about Forge, and these guys have played. We did a little study on this a year or two ago that of all the great derbies that there are around, and this isn't a derby, but if you take the great matches, the 2 Barcelona teams, the 2 teams in Milan, the 2 teams in Manchester, any of those great rivalries, Cavalry and Forge have played more than twice as often as the greatest frequency of those matches over the years. Like, it was unbelievable, like 29 in the first 4 years or something like that. It was just a serious number of things. So there's stuff built up there, and there is stuff built up with the fans. And, the Cavalry thought they had the championship won last year. And then, of course, Forge pours on the other 2 goals in extra time. Then you saw it in the opening day, similar type of situation. And, there's this kind of number that for the most part, Forge has over them, except the goals distribution between the two teams are very even over such a period of time for Forge having won more of the games. Now, Forge tends to win the more quote unquote important games in my mind. There was a couple in the Canadian Championship, I think, that they didn't, and also they didn't finish first that year to win the Shield for finishing first. Let's not forget this. Like, we kind of got lost in Forge's victory over Montreal, but the night before or earlier, Pacific had beaten the Whitecaps. Now they needed to score 2 goals and they only scored 1, but they scored a goal against, they won a game there. So that's
Calgary.
both.
Calgary beat Vancouver. Yeah.
Vancouver. Did I say that? Yeah. So I meant, yeah, exactly. And that's amazing.
No, I think that's a really good point. I was just going to bring up the fact that they're in a similar position to Forge right now, coming off a win against an MLS opponent. And it makes it a little bit, I don't know, complicated in the sense that, okay, there's not too much going on in the regular season right now. They seem a little bit flat, that 6 draws kind of tells you that story. But at the same time, they know what they're capable of. And that's one thing that Tommy Wheeldon said in the post-game presser: we can beat any team at any time. So by no means do I think that their place in the standings is reflective of how they'll come out for this game.
No.
Because like you said, there's history here, and I think they're going to hold a grudge against that Olympico and this team for a very long time.
Well, yeah. The whole grudge, I mean, it's 2 championships they've lost to them, and there's a lot to be grudgeful about, if that's the word. And they've got some talent. They got Ali Musi was the player of the year last year, and I think he's only played 4 games, so I don't know if he's been hurt. Yeah, I mean, and he's one of those guys that's seven goals type of thing, and they went into Pacific and took a point out of there, but I think it was Klomp that was talking about the frustration that is building on that team. So that can go 2 ways. The frustration being, we're playing well enough to win, and we are not winning. Right. So I think they're looking for that big goal or 2, but this might be the wrong team to say, well, we'll get that early goal and it'll be big, because we've seen what Forge come back against them. They know they have to play a 90-minute game against them here. So, Forge obviously wants to continue playing their game. Don't play Pacific's game, Cavalry's game. Yeah. So Pacific tried to clog the middle against Calgary, and Calgary was able to get the ball outside and work well on that. But that's where Forge wants to play the game anyways, right? And wheel through the middle. I mean, they got 2 great guys that can go either way in the middle with the ball. And so, this is going to be a difficult task for Cavalry, because 1 goal isn't going to turn it around for them against this team. It may against some other teams to get the wins, and they need wins.
We've seen too many times Forge come away with win after trailing from behind.
Yeah, too many times in a good way and a bad way.
Yeah.
Don't keep tempting. Exactly. Yeah. Don't keep chasing the game, if you can. And that was what was great about against York. They hadn't won in 3 games. They dropped 8 of the 9 points in the CPL, albeit within the, in the middle of that was the Montreal thing, which dominated everything. The game against Ottawa was a bit, that was an aberration. They really, they were just drained emotionally, particularly emotionally, and really had no practice time, no rest, that kind of stuff. So that was the other thing, by the way, of if we can go back to Kwasi just a little bit, and those young guys, look at the rest that some of the players, they brought Borges off and a few others to give them a little more rest, and because they could trust the guys that were in there. I mean, it helps to have a 3-0 lead, but that can pay dividends, not in this game or next game, but down the road, when the guys are getting a little worn out a little bit more, especially in July, when they're going to be at the, again, some shortened weeks because of the Canadian Championship. So the one story we have to alert people about right now, even though it's a little more than a month away, is that Daniel Para cannot play in the first game because he double yellowed, right? And so he's ineligible. So that, now they've got some people there, that can fill in very admirably. That's where the depth on the back line. And who knows, maybe both players that they've been hoping to get will be, particularly for matches like this. It's a great thing they've stayed alive, because maybe they have Nana back, and maybe they have Cisse back by then. If they don't, there's something really wrong with the system in this country. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, and something to keep in mind, I think, ahead of time. So
look, it's a long way away yet, but I don't think we can get enough of talking about it, because it's going to be, again, one of the biggest games ever played in this stadium.
Right,
sure.
And you can't help but point that out, given how influential Para has been since coming here.
And it's only the first leg. That's still 90 minutes without the guy who is really, if he's not there, he's really close to being the best player in this league right now. I mean, he's nibbling around the edges of that, and probably one of his own teammates is right there with him too. There's a half a dozen players right now that you could say,
for sure.
Yeah, but there's 2 or 3 candidates from Hamilton as well. So.
All right, Milty, let's go a little back on track here.
Sure.
Going back to Cavalry, you mentioned how many times these teams have matched up, and that's kind of contributed to almost what has become a rivalry, not obviously a derby, but still these matchups are definitely not only physical but emotionally charged.
They are.
Or how have you seen the evolution of this quote unquote rivalry, I guess now?
Well, it started right away. That was what was amazing about it. I mean, right away, the very first game was as bitter as it got. They're physical. Somebody had mentioned to me, and they used the word, I don't like to use this word, but one of the players had mentioned, they often can be a bit of a bloodbath because it's so physical. There's anger out there. So it's evolved. On one thing being on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. And great rivalries, no matter where they are, cannot happen. And this is why York and Hamilton haven't got that rivalry yet, because lots of interesting things have to happen in games that are huge. And that's happened with right away from Calgary. But then in the first year in the finals, and then last year in the finals, and several other times, all those 1-0 victories that I think in the first year that Forge ended the season against, I think the last 4 maybe were 1-0 or something like that against the Cavalry. It's sort of like Forge has a dynasty, but to have a real dynasty, you got to have a bit of a foil. In any sport, it's always better. Let's go to horse racing when there's a Triple Crown winner. If there's a great second horse all the time that finishes second every time, and this one just keeps beating it just a little bit. And the best example, of course, over the years has been the Yankees in baseball. That kind of rivalry that sets up a target on everybody's back, that everybody except the people in the city of that team, in this case Hamilton, hates, because they're so successful and they look like everything goes their way. And so you start saying, well, they get this, they get that, they get the calls. Well, they really don't. What they do is, so there are fouls against, it's like McDavid. Yeah. McDavid always gets, people kick penalties against McDavid. Yeah. Because they're holding him on every single play because he's so good. And that's sort of what happens with Forge. Yeah, they draw a lot of penalties. They create some of their own too, but they draw an awful lot of penalties because they're by the people. They're by the people. So the evolution of that, I think there's a bit of evolution of frustration and I think this is a dangerous game for Forge. But because it is Cavalry, they'll pick it up, and they're on the road, and there's something about being on the road that galvanizes teams because you get all that time, a little more time together than you normally do. I mean, this is a pretty close team anyways. They demand a lot of each other. But, on the road, you get the travel, you get the night hotel together and all of those things. But the frustration that they're having right now about only having tied games and not winning them can play both ways, as we mentioned earlier. You can get on them and take advantage of that, because that they may press a little hard and leave some openings there. And Forge is terrific at finding openings, and they're good counter. They make good adjustments at the half, but so does Calgary. They make some good adjustments as well. So the weak part of them being frustrated from Cavalry standpoint is they could make mistakes out of that frustration trying too hard, and you cannot try over. You can't push too hard against Forge because they're a possession team and a counterattack.
They'll punish you for it.
They will punish you for it. But that said, it also gives them a lot of motivation if they get one right off the top too. So this will be interesting. It's going to be a great game to watch.
You said a few things there that stand out to me. So let me go back.
Okay.
Number one, that it's been bitter since the start. This is why I love talking to you, Milty, because you've seen it. You saw literally what that opening matchup looks like. And when you kick it off with that kind of tone, there's no going back. That's what the bar has been set. And you're right. It's an accumulation of these really, really like physical matchups. What'll be interesting to see, having, 6 ties and maybe that pent up frustration, is not only if they will capitalize on that, use it as motivation, as you said, or potentially make mistakes, but I want to know, is it going to be more scrappy than it normally is?
Well, for sure the possibility's there, Mac. For sure the possibility of that is there. These are the two coaches that they've absolutely dominated this league, and we've talked about this before. We talked about this going into opening day, that the two of them were the two that had figured out what it was going to take to win in this league, and they keep figuring it out as the league evolves. I think that's the other part. When you asked about evolution, if I could just end with this, they have not only figured it out at the start, that it's good to have experienced teams that know each other and those kinds of things, but they've both evolved in different ways. Bobby's done it a certain way, but they've also figured out the evolution of the league as the league has got better. Sometimes the league doesn't look like it's got better because these two teams have dominated so much, but it's because they've got even better than the other teams have. The other teams have gotten better, and you can see it this year. Any team's quite capable, and they're still struggling in Halifax, let's say, but Valor, now that they're playing at home, might show a little more. They missed their first 8 games, on 7 of which was CPL. They had to play on the road.
That is a really good point. And something that Charlie said, for example, was how impressed he was with the level of play from Tristan Borges in comparison to 2019, because everybody's like drawing that parallel, but he said not a lot of people are recognizing how good the competition is now and how much more impressive it is that he's playing that way.
Especially on defenders particularly.
Yeah, exactly. Great point, Milty. I can't wait to talk about this one. It'll be fun. We got the front end and the back end preview and the review.
Yeah, all right. Okay, Mac.
Thanks so much, Milty.
Talk to you later.
That will conclude today's episode. As I said, Milty and I got the preview and review set up and all ready to go. So you can expect us to break down everything that happens tomorrow on Monday. But in the meantime, tune into One Soccer on Saturday, 5 p.m. to watch your Forge FC take on Cavalry.
This has been Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.